Welcome to Multiplicity-preneurs Moments with AliNICOLE WOW. She does it all. And of course, the outstanding Multiplicity Moundbuilder, Joesph L Jones Jr. This production is a resource of www.multiplicityentrepreneurs.tumblr.com. And today we want to address the focus of diversifying or disintegrate. And this is such a very important topic to speak about, really for the simple fact that there's been, a global shifting in the business marketplace and also the entrepreneurial economic frameworks and all of the evolution through progressive innovation that has taken place. And we actually have Joesph to thank for this topic, and I'm certainly ready to delve into this subject. So Joesph, let's not delay in doing so.
Let's not.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that we are going to be having this conversation. And, you spoke in a previous conversation about the lack of diversifying really keeps business owners from what you mentioned being kind of their pastures of plenty. And also, too, that it could lead them to extinction if they don't diversify, or as you said in the conversation, it was diversify or disintegrate. And I kind of love that because I likened it to something that I mentioned before, that Usher has a quote and says that it's time to you either evolve or evaporate. And it is more like an adapt or die scenario. And that's certainly where the business dynamics have led up to, at this point for sure.
That is definitely a law of nature. You pretty much have to adapt to changing environments, or you basically disintegrate or evaporate.
Right.
As a result of that. As the environment change and as time usher in change, you have to change accordingly. And that's what we mean about diversifying. Initially, when we hear the word diversify, we think about the way that word has been used in recent years with respect to business. And that way is getting different types of people, different genders in the workplace and on the workforce. And that's what people think about when they hear the word diversity. And that certainly has its place. But more specifically today, what we're speaking about in terms of diversity is diversity in what a business offers.
Yes.
And diversity in how they offer and present what they have to gift the world with. That's the diversity that we're keying in on right now, because if that's not done, these businesses will be out of business very shortly.
Oh, you are so right. I can attest to that. Before you move forward, I can attest to that because, over the last few years, the small businesses that I have been able to help keep from shutting down, each of those empires have had to leverage diversifying different departments in their giftings and their offerings, and also the business owners themselves would have to diversify themselves even as solopreneurs of having some other form of entrepreneurial framework to go along even with their major businesses. So definitely I can attest to that and why diversifying is so important. And I love the distinction that you made in terms of when there's the traditional mindset around diversity, and we do think of it, like you said, in terms of groups and different things like that. But yes, in the business frameworks, especially particularly multiplicity-preneurship, yes, we are talking about the leveraging of various aspects of talent, expertise, skills, and using that as a diversifying platform to showcase and express a variety of different levels of one's gifting. So I'm excited about this conversation because, the whole thing is to keep brands and businesses from disintegrating. And diversifying, I mean, what better way to do it? But I guess, the interesting thing over the years has been that there's been the lack of awareness that that even needs to be done. And I think that is primarily going back to what we've been discussing for, quite some time, is that there's been the conditioning about staying focused on one particular area and leveraging that. And when you stay focused on one particular area, then it doesn't allow this diversity, this expansion, that we're talking about today. And also something you said in the conversation about when this doesn't happen, then businesses, they're left feeling kind of, not, you didn't say disjointed, but it was more like they're left wanting. I think that's what you mentioned, that
Right.
not only the business owner, but also the customers or the clients, they're left wanting because they feel and sense that there's something more that could come forth from these businesses or from these brands, and they're not getting that. So do you mind speaking to that a little bit more? I think that would be a really, really good direction to open up during this dialogue today, for sure.
Certainly. As you talk about the traditional model of the one niche wonders and focusing specifically on one thing, in those traditional models, the business would have its workers focus on one particular job, on one particular aspect of the business, and just keep them focused on that. Then they'll have another worker where they're focused on one particular thing, and then they're able to bring the whole together as a result of each person doing their own parts.
Yes.
Now, that works in terms of a system, but it's very limiting for the worker, and it's also very limiting for the business as well. You want to be well-rounded individuals. So you want to have a well-rounded understanding of how each component fits into the whole and makes the whole work. But if you're just interested in having these parts and people just focus on those parts, and then you're at the top benefiting from each person's part, it is to your advantage to keep those individuals just focused on that one thing, because that serves you better, or at least they think that serves them better. But in the long run, it actually hampers the worker and it hampers the business. So you want to begin to diversify, which means you want to have workers and employees and even business owners who are in collaboration with other business owners and other businesses. You want to have them well-rounded. And once you're well-rounded and understand how the system works, how the business works, how these offerings are put forth in the marketplace, and how that benefits both employee and employer, then you have an understanding of how you can begin to diversify yourself and then grow up to a point where you become the business owner and you're able to set in motion systems that allow people to begin to do more than one thing, offer more than one thing, and they have a wide range of things that they can present. So we're coming from that perspective, as opposed to just focusing on one thing.
There you go. Yes, we are. And I am so glad you said that. I am sitting over here like on edge, like a kid, like with my hand raised, like, I can attest to this. So I want to share this really quick because, years ago, and it feels like it's been eons ago, I worked in the hotel industry, upper management. And what we did within our operation that no one else was doing is that we actually cross-trained. And I'm a cross-trainer and have been cross-trained in over 50 areas, and I teach that. But within that operation, we cross-trained those within that particular branch. And so we would have a housekeeper who was also cross-trained as a desk clerk. And guess what? There were two different pay grades, or wages, I should say. So when she was doing housekeeping, she got paid as a housekeeper. When it was time for her shift to be a desk clerk, she got paid the salary of a desk clerk. And so I've always enjoyed being able to be a part of those types of operations, and that was something I actually brought in, to that particular format is being able to leverage different giftings across the board and with those different pay grades, like I said, as well, because it gives the organization the opportunity to be very expansive, and it works really well. And also too, it gave the employee the opportunity to leverage multiple, different giftings and be classified in different roles. And so, on a resume, that really looks good, right?
Looks very good.
Yeah. And so I've been a believer in this, like I said, for so long, and then coming over into the entrepreneurial space and being able to, to leverage that and have cross functionality within an empire. Yeah, it's nothing like it, for sure. And then it also takes the limits off of the greater potential that can come forth. And so when we apply this to actual business structures, especially in this new era, definitely it's going to maximize the results for a particular operation. Do you agree?
Well, certainly. And one of the issues that people are facing right now, particularly in the workforce and the evolving workforce, is, say, for example, in the example that you just gave, of a person who, once they were on shift and they were making beds and doing the maid work, and then they come to the counter and they do the counter work. The problem is, if you take that to a fast food restaurant and you look at a person who, not fast food, let's say a supermarket. This is a great example. In a supermarket, they have, of course, the cashiers.
Yes.
Now, I've noticed when you go in some of the major supermarkets here in my area, you find that there's less cashiers because they have machines there that are now, dispensing the money. You just put the money in, or you put the card in.
Yeah, the self-servers.
Self-service. And so now that position has become, in many places, obsolete.
Right.
And that's an example of what's happening in the business places, in the workforce as well. If you're only trained to do one thing, and that one thing reaches its ceiling, and it gets to a point where it's obsolete or becoming obsolete, you have no place else to go unless you diversify and learn how to do something different, or have, as you say, been cross-trained in other areas that allow you to present another part of yourself or another business offering.
Absolutely.
So this is what we have to think about nowadays moving forward, because when shutdowns occur in industries, we have to have other outlets through which we can present what we have to offer, make a living for ourselves, and continue to thrive.
You are absolutely right. You are absolutely right. And, on that note, I want to segue sort of back into the online space, because we know within this digital era, for sure, everything is continuously shifting. I mean, the online space certainly is nothing new, but we now see that it's becoming not optional, and people are really going to have to embrace entrepreneurship, whether they want to or not. And that was something you and I had discussed in a previous conversation, that even religious structures or even charities, so they're really going to have to start classifying themselves as spiritual entrepreneurs, because whether they want to believe it or not, they are in business. If you are an operation, you are an organization, you are certainly in the business of something. And at this stage in the game, people are definitely going to be looking at not just how they make a greater impact, but also the income factor. And so when we factor in the income factor, then you certainly are, in business. But even some of the nonprofits, or like I said, even religious structures, they're running their operations as a business anyway, even though they're classifying it under, that it's not. But now coming back to the online space, that people are going to have to really become home-based entrepreneurs, or just managing the online world and being able to be a part of that. It really is no longer optional, for sure.
It's not optional. And those who haven't prepared themselves for that up to this point are going to have to take a crash course.
You're right about that. Right. Yeah. You're absolutely right. And it is one of those crash courses, in the sense is like, okay, because it's new and there's going to be the learning curve. It's more like a chick that's hatched or a baby bird, and at a certain stage, the mother pushes it out of the nest, and it's got to kind of learn how to fly on the way down. And it didn't necessarily have to be like that, but because people weren't getting out ahead, and I don't even want to say getting out ahead, because honestly, within the entrepreneurial space or the online space, that's really been like the norm for like a long time anyhow, right? So, but now people, go ahead, I'm sorry?
I said it has been.
Yeah, it has been. But now when people are seeing it, oh, this is now more than just me going online to shop and to look for different things or connect with friends and family that who aren't in my area. Now it's a way of living. Now it's a lifestyle in terms of having to do work from this perspective now, right? So this has actually been in place for, like I said, quite some time, but now people are seeing that I've got to be online and establish myself for lifestyle and for career in this online space. And the diversity, within that comes when people can start looking at online as really this canvas and start to paint this new adventure for themselves. And it doesn't have to look like the traditional of, I have this job and this is what I'm doing from 9 to 5, so to speak. And then I've got my little family time here. It's like, no, it all works together kind of like a hand in glove. It's a cohesiveness, but there is the diversity within that that's going to actually make it work, and not just sticking to just a framework, because those frameworks actually, as we know, they've already disintegrated. They've already evaporated. Right. And people are now, people are now just waking up to realize, oh, the cliff is crumbling, and now they're trying to run before the last rock drops. Does that make sense?
Good luck with that.
Exactly. And it's really not funny, but just adding a little humor to this, because it, and being kind of animated with it, because I actually saw that imagery kind of in my head. But that actually metaphorically is what is happening. Is now it's oh wow, that this is taking place, and I got to scramble now and try to get things together, and then to even have kind of, I don't want to say the stress around that, but it kind of is. So now think about, how can I leverage multiple parts of who I am, and because right now they feel like the one thing I need to focus on is getting these new structures in place for my livelihood and sustainability. And what we are really encouraging people at this point is that as you are thinking about that and considering these things, the Multiplicity-preneur model is certainly the one that you need to embody, because there won't be the limitations there. It's not a locked-in framework where you have to, it's not a cookie cutter, one size fits all. The multiplicity and the diversity comes from your unique journey and your unique experience.
Very true. I like to think of and give the example of Walmart. Walmart is a great example of that.
Yeah.
Because what it speaks to is, when we think back in days gone by, you used to have your local hardware store, and you have your local supermarket, and you have your local business center or business office where you go and make copies or what have you. Now, things have shifted quite a bit. That is still applicable in some of your small towns where you still have those things in place.
Right.
But on a grander scale, when you look at Walmart, Walmart has replaced all of those things, because you can go to Walmart and you can get groceries, you can get tools, you can get office products. Heck, you can go get your tires changed.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. Because, as you know, I'm someone who debunked the myth in terms of brands or solo brands can't run their empires like a super Walmart. And I've been doing that, for years, with over, 500 platforms. And just starting out, in a sense, it was just like maybe 80 platforms. And then it just kept growing and growing to serve a variety of different niches. And then got up to 300, and then just kind of kept growing. And the thing about it is, when people say that you can't do this, I mean, that's been, like I said, such a restriction. It's created so much resistance. Being able to diversify, and as you mentioned, how Walmart has all these different areas. And if we look at our lives as a whole, is kind of that super Walmart framework. We have different areas of our lives, and it's just a matter of leveraging those different areas and diversifying and seeing them as departments within a whole, and then allowing other people to come and partake, of that. That's, one of the main reasons too why I've published so many publications on Amazon, close to 300, is that, and that all comes from my personal, professional, educational, and spiritual experience, my whole life, because my life is a niche. And so being able to be kind of this walking, living, breathing super Walmart or super Target, if you will, expression, it really is the wave of the future. And I'm glad that people are now starting to, understand that, because being boxed in that one framework, it certainly hasn't worked. And I'm not saying that it hasn't to a certain extent, but here's my thing. If whatever you're doing has been aligned for you and it has been working for you, there would be also another component being introduced at some point that says something is shifting and something is changing. And that's what happened for me, Joesph, is that whenever I was like in the traditional model, but there was something else emerging and telling me I needed to pioneer this new way, pioneer this new expression. So there was a prompting, an impulse saying, start preparing to go this route, start preparing to go this route. And so as transitioning out of the old into the newer expansiveness, most people, like I said, aren't getting that awareness that they need to actually be, as they're doing what they're doing, be preparing another track to transition into something more expansive. But because they haven't known what that is, that's kind of been, how can I say that? That's kind of been the thing, is that they've been missing the opportunities, even though it's there, but because of being locked in that system, they can't see or perceive it. I guess that's the best way I can say it.
That's absolutely correct. And it reminds me of a work entitled On the Right Track from a prolific author with whom I'm having
one
a
of our
conversation
collaborations. Thank you for bringing that up. It's one of our works together outside of the multiplicity, the multiplicity space, but it still applies. But yeah, go ahead and speak to what you were going to say around that.
Well, that's important to make sure that you're on the right track and make sure that you're tuning in so that you can adhere to those inner promptings when it's time to shift in another direction or make changes in your professional life, that you actually leap according to the way that you're being led. And a lot of people don't take the initiative to do that. And then a lot of people have not been trained to listen and to really hear what's coming forth from within them, because they're so busy listening to the dictates that's being
inundated
force-fed to them from without.
Yeah, you're right.
So
they're inundated.
It's very important to take advantage of that.
Oh, I agree. I definitely agree. I'm so glad we had this conversation about this, and actually the direction in which it has expanded, because we've been more solution oriented in what we're bringing forth versus, focusing more on the disintegration part. We are really keeping the energy in the diversity and just kind of painting this picture of why diversifying your branding, your business, your expression of livelihood needs to come forth as a business owner, for sure. Because at this point, we might as well start calling everybody entrepreneurs and business owners, no matter what stage of the game that they're in, because that definitely, like I said, is where, things are headed. And before we close out, because I definitely want to hear some wrap up statements from you, on this, particular topic. But I do want to share with our listening audience the importance about positioning their brand for the next level, in which that's something you and we talk about quite a bit. because you can have a business, but you definitely have to have a solid brand. And you may not necessarily have all of that down as you are starting, but the developmental process of it, we want you to be really aware and to do this the right way. So I want to introduce or reintroduce to some who may not be aware of the two publications that Joesph and I have on Amazon in this particular area. And there are two action planners. And the first one is Conscious Multiplicity Branding, the Conscious Multiplicity Branding Factor for New Era Entrepreneurs. And basically that publication is an introduction to multifaceted branding, really for next level business success. And then we have Brand Building with Multiplicity Entrepreneurship Made Easy. And that one is really about how you start to create multiple streams of revenue with having a multifaceted brand. And so again, those are two action planners that we have co-collabed and co-authored together on Amazon. So as we are closing out this particular segment, Joesph, share what you think is really most important for them to focus on just in terms of the topic, because this is really an important topic to go in on. I mean, because basically if people don't really start to diversify, it is really, unfortunately, night lights out for business owners. And for those who haven't even gotten started, it certainly would not be a good thing to not be on the side of the right track.
Well, it's clear that the conclusion or the wrap up is actually in the title, and that is Diversify or Disintegrate. And the reason why we say that is because many businesses, as we know, have already fallen, and many are continue to fall on a daily basis because they have not adapted to this changing environment and the new era that we're emerging into.
You are so right.
So it's important that we begin to diversify. And what that requires is for business owners to become professionally pliable, which means they have to be able to adjust and maneuver and shift their offerings and what they're doing so that it fits the time and it serves the public that they're trying to address. So it's important that they diversify not only what they're doing, but what they're offering so that their offerings are in accord with the time in which we live. And with that, I would say make sure that you take advantage of this series that we're doing in terms of Diversify or Disintegrate, as well as previous series that we've offered, talking about this important topic of multiplicity and how you can offer many more things than you're offering and many more ways of presenting those things so that you can survive and diversify and not disintegrate.
Amen to that. That's right. It's all about moving into that thriving space. And you and I have so much more to talk about, in terms of just this, this topic here. But I'm really grateful for how this segment unfolded. And of course, your wrap-ups are always phenomenal. So I'm just thankful for that because you stated it perfectly for sure. So I want to invite our listeners to follow or connect with both Joesph and I on LinkedIn, and there's going to be the info in the show description and also the info in the show description about the publications that I mentioned, but they are available on Amazon. So this has been Multiplicity-preneurs Moments, and we hope that this segment was really extremely empowering for you to really see how things have been evolving, become more aware of these evolutionary shifts that are really required for bringing more diversity into your framework so that your business can thrive in this new era marketplace as it's continuing to expand. So it's time to expand so you don't evaporate. So you got to evolve. So thanks for joining us. And as always, until our next moments together, we wish you well.